We have the next session also in English, and I would like to introduce you to Hanna Kleber, and I will hand over to her. She will be moderating this round. Hanna Kleber is CEO at Kleber Group and President at Corp Touristik. It's yours.
Thank you so much. I'm a bit a joke of the ITB because I lost my voice last night, and we couldn't replace it. But so I try my best. Hopefully you can understand me. And I would like to ask our panel speaker, Alexandra Costa-Convaltes from Frontex, and he will do a short presentation on the new EU border control landscape. So he will guide us on what is the system all about and how we're going to implement it. And later on, we have our partners coming on board to speak about it.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexandre Gonçalves. I'm a team leader in ETIAS Central Unit in Frontex. Today, I'm here to let you know that big changes are coming to non-EU travelers when traveling into Europe. And everyone, carriers, travelers, and member states need to be prepared. Let's have a look on these two new changes, shall we?
Maybe I'll just sit there.
So, these two new changes are EES, that stands for Entry and Exit System, and ETIAS, the European Travel Authorization. And these both will impact the travels into 30 European countries. Let's have a look, one by one, to these new changes and these new two systems, okay? First one is Entry and Exit System. It will start this year, in autumn this year, and it will impact all non-EU travelers when they are traveling into 29 countries. I will repeat, Entry and Exit System will be applicable to all non-EU travelers when they are traveling into 29 countries, okay? And what is Entry and Exit System about? Let me give you some examples. Today, an American citizen, when traveling into Europe, he has his passport stamped when he enters and when he leaves the country. Because the border guards, they need to be aware when the travel entered, how many days he have remained within the country, and when he left. The Entry and Exit System will replace the stamps. And instead of stamps on the passports, there will be electronic records that will be centralized and shared amongst 29 countries. Okay? This means that the set of information a border guard has in Finland is exactly the same information a border guard has in Portugal. Also, perhaps you are aware that today, passports are very difficult to falsify because they have a lot of security elements on it. So what criminals try to do to enter illegally in Europe is to use someone else's passport that looks like him. With Entry and Exit System, it won't be possible anymore because the Entry and Exit System, it will capture the biometrics of all non-EU travelers, fingerprints and facial image. And it will start this year, okay? This is the first change. Let's see the second one. Second one, European Travel Information and Authorization System. A big name, let's keep it short, ETIAS. It will start 6 months after the Entry and Exit System. And ETIAS is an additional requirement, an additional obligation to the non-EU travelers that are exempt from visa. Okay? Another example. Today, an American citizen, if he wants to travel into Europe, he just needs a valid passport when he travels. That's it. With ETIAS, when he enters an operation, he will need to apply for an ETIAS before traveling. Okay? It will have a cost of €7, a validity of 3 years, and there will be a transition period so that everyone involved, all actors, will get used to this new implementation. Okay? Now, in which countries these 2 new systems will be implemented? Okay? You can see the map, there's different colors because the European countries, they have different status, but let's try to keep it simple, okay? International system and ETIAS will be implemented in the European Union countries plus Schengen countries, okay? There's some exceptions here. Ireland. You can see Ireland marked in red because Ireland won't apply neither international system nor ETIAS. You can also see Cyprus marked in yellow. Because Cyprus won't apply EES, it means that the travelers, when traveling to Cyprus, their passports will continue to be stamped. Okay? Clear? Good. Now, let's have a look on this new travel process to Europe, having in consideration these 2 new changes, international system and ETIAS, okay? Well, let's see step by step. So the pre-departure phase, step number 1, if a traveler needs to have an ETIAS, is visa exempt, he needs to apply online to an ETIAS travel authorization. He can go to the smartphone, his laptop, he goes to ETIAS website, and he applies for this travel authorization. This is step number 1, okay? Step number 2, you need to do the payment, okay? The traveler does the payment, €7, and we go to step number 3. Step number 3, all the data that the traveler has inserted on the application, it will be run against secured databases just to make sure that everything is fine with this traveler. In case there's an issue, because eventually the passport is not valid, or because the traveler might have a European warrant, this application will be manually processed, okay? But this will be a few cases, right? Next step, the applicant will receive the response, either authorized or refused, okay? And the answer will be provided via email, so it's useful that the travelers have access to the email all the time, okay? Of course, they have the right to appeal if they don't agree with the decision that was taken. Next, we start having changes also for the carriers, because the carriers, they will need to verify if the travelers have a valid ETIAS or a valid visa. This is something that will be also new for the carriers, okay? The last step, let's see what will change at the border. For the border guards, they will need to verify if the travelers have a valid ETIAS or a valid visa, okay? It's important to state that ETIAS, it's not a visa, okay? It's a travel authorization to visa-exempt travelers, and it's only for short stays. Tourism, attending conventions, conferences, to visit family, relatives, friends, okay? This is the purpose of an ETIAS. Now, which countries, this is the list of countries whose nationals will need to apply for an ETIAS. 60 countries, 1.4 billion travelers will need to apply for an ETIAS before traveling into 30 countries. And this will start in 2025. Now let's have a look more in detail what will change for the travelers. Before traveling, the traveler will need to apply for an ETIAS. This is something new. Okay? Regarding the entry and exit system, the traveler does not need to perform any additional action before traveling. Okay? But both systems together, entry and exit system and ETIAS, they will provide very useful information to the traveler because they will be able to verify online if the travel authorization is valid, if the visa is valid, and how many days they have left to remain within the countries. Okay? Now, what will change at the border? At the border, if a traveler will need to have an ETIAS and doesn't have one, will be refused. There's no fallback. No ETIAS, no entry into the European countries. Okay? Regarding the biometrics, as I mentioned already before, the biometrics will be captured. Fingerprint and facial image. Okay? Now, as this is a new requirement for the travelers applying for an ETIAS, they will be able to benefit support when they are filling in the application in case they have some doubts. They will be able to request support to the ETIAS central unit. What will change for the carriers? The carriers have already some obligations. They need to verify when they are boarding the travelers if they have the valid documentation. ETIAS and EES brings additional obligations to the carriers because they need to verify when they are boarding the travelers if these travelers have a valid ETIAS or a valid visa. They will have a window of 48 hours to do this verification before departure, okay? And if they don't comply with this obligation, they might face some penalties if they board someone with an invalid ETIAS or an invalid visa. Now, how will carriers be able to do this? They will do this verification of the status of the travelers online on an interface called carrier interface. They will provide the travelers information to this tool, and this tool will provide the carriers one of three answers. Okay, it means the traveler has a valid ETIAS or a valid visa. Not okay, you have a problem, okay? The traveler does not have a valid ETIAS or a valid visa. Not applicable, the traveler is not even in scope. It doesn't need an ETIAS or a valid visa, okay? And also because this is an additional requirement for the carriers, they will benefit to have support 24/7 from the ETIAS central unit in Frontex, okay? A support that will be provided online, in exceptional cases also via emergency phone line. Now, some publicity to where I'm coming from. ETIAS central unit in Frontex. The main mandate of ETIAS central unit is to provide support to travelers, carriers, and member states when these systems enter in operations. We will start working 24/7 when entry and exit system starts in operations, okay? Now some concerning information. There are 62 unofficial ETIAS websites, and the number keeps growing. And this is concerning. Some websites, they are collecting the travelers' data. They are already charging fees, and ETIAS is not even operational. And they are even doing promotions. Apply for an ETIAS and they get another one for free. We are trying to fight this, because this is concerning for the travelers, because they might be victims of document fraud, financial fraud, hacking, and of course they will have access to the wrong set of information. The right set of information is only on the official ETIAS website. So my last slide for you today is this one. There is only one official ETIAS website. This one, okay? The QR code is functional, you can scan it. It's already operational, the website. It contains a lot of useful information about what ETIAS is about, what obligations it will bring to everyone. Okay? To summarize, changes are coming. We need to be prepared all together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexandra. Sounds very sexy. So I think we have quite a bit of a challenge with this topic because this needs to be mastered and there are a lot of parties, of course, involved. And I would like to ask on stage Marie-Caroline Laurent. She's the Director General Europe for CLIA. Thank you, Marie. Matthias Jacobi, he's the Manager Central Europe from IATA. And Dr. Ira Fernandez Lazaro, long title, Senior Executive Strategic Planning, Passenger Experience Aviation Management from the airport in Düsseldorf. So, thank you for coming today. Unfortunately, we had a cancellation from our Bundespolizei, because I think this is also very important how to implement. But today, for us, it's really to see how can we master the kind of implementation. I think this is not a very easy one, because of course on the paper it looks great, but what are the implications at the end to make the system running? Because it has the goal to make the borders safer and to save time for the travelers as well, entering from non-Schengen countries into Europe. And of course, it should be all over Europe in the same standards, in the same airports, and involved, of course, the airports, the harbors, and all systems. So that sounds wonderful, but how are we going to implement in Europe with all these different level of technologies and infrastructure? It's actually quite good. I thought I don't get speaking. So try my best, sorry. But I would like to start, first of all, with Matthias, representing the airlines, of course, here in Europe. And I would say, so how are you going to cooperate, with the airlines, informing passengers before registering, before departure? Otherwise they will be left behind. And I think this creates a lot of frustration and costs as well. So how do you inform your airlines and their customers, and how far are you with the airlines?
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Hannah. Does it work?
Yep.
Yes.
Your voice is fabulous.
Keep that.
Yeah, welcome, first of all. Welcome to Germany. I'm Matthias Jacobi. I'm the head of IATA in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Luxembourg, and Liechtenstein. Very important market. Not so much for the cruise lines, I guess, but yeah, welcome to Berlin. I hope you had a good transportation to Berlin. I wish you best of luck to get back to your home places, because we have so many strikes going on towards the end of the week. Deutsche Bahn is on strike, Lufthansa will be on strike, so yeah, keep the fingers crossed, including for myself. But Hannah, thanks very much for the questions. Well, first of all, I believe, and thanks to ITB also, it's a great opportunity for all of us here on stage to be able to inform the world, actually, about these changes to come. Because we have a little bit of the impression that most of the people that we speak to are not really informed about what's coming. That brings me to the first issue, probably, and that is communication. I believe we need to have some clarity on what exactly is happening and when. There's still a big question mark there. We don't know about a firm date so far. We have indications, could be in November, but this is, I don't know, number 4 or 5 of postponements of the implementation. So we have some question marks there. So we need communication. We need also we need some lead time for the testing and implementation of that system, because as mentioned by our colleague from Frontex, carriers have a liability of boarding passengers that are allowed or not allowed to enter the European market. So if we transport someone, or our members transport someone who is not allowed to travel and enter into the European Union or Schengen area, there will be a fine for carriers to be paid. So that means We have to train our people in outstations everywhere in the world, across the networks of an airline, for instance, in our case, that there will be changes. We need to train them on new systems that are not yet there. We need to make them aware that there's responsibilities here, and a lot of things are really not clear at this stage. We still have a couple of days and weeks and months ahead of us before implementation. But again, summarizing the concerns is timelines is not really clear. Testing, we don't know when this will happen and on which basis. And operational questions for carriers, and that's the big question mark.
Thank you, Matthias. I think there's a lot of, it looks like there's a bit pile of problems which still need to be sorted out. Unfortunately, okay. I think this is the one side, is the ETIAS with the airlines, but I think at the end, the airlines itself, of course, landing at the airports, I think this is a huge logistical problem, a technical and a logistical problem. So how are you going to work on that? I mean, Dr. Ira Fernandez Lazaro, it's a really great name, because I mean, I can imagine not so much in Düsseldorf, where you have a lot of long-haul carriers, but for example in Frankfurt, where I come from, 284s in the morning, like 1,000 people coming in one go. So how will that be handled? How you think logistically you will manage that, inform customers, and how you channel those people through the airports? And so you're lucky in Düsseldorf, but maybe you can give us a bit more idea how this is going to happen, because it's not only in Germany, but it happens worldwide, where you have different standards as well.
Yes, thank you very much for this question. Actually, you highlight how difficult it's going to be for airports to manage a very great and seamless passenger experience whenever we have the introduction of entry-exit systems. So, Alex, I have to say you make a very wonderful presentation, because the topic is very complex, and I think everybody could understand what it really means to have EES or ETIAS. So, just taking into consideration that all non-European citizens, whenever coming into Europe, they have to collect, or the federal police have to collect the biometric data, facial images and fingerprint. In turn, it means that we are going to have process times at the border control at European airports for around 4 times, 5 times that we have nowadays. And we make the first calculations already 4 years ago, and we say, wow, this is going to be very challenging. So all of us, whatever it is a hub or not a hub, we made our homework, and we assessed this impact of increased process times at the border control, and just to see if with the existing facilities we can manage it or not. And for us, we have the airports, they always have 2 premises. First of all, we want our passengers not to have more than 20-25 minutes within the immigration. And of course, we have to preserve the minimum connecting times of 35 minutes. So we realize, many of us, that we have to expand the infrastructure, that we have to increase our capacity. And we have been doing that in a big form or in a just smaller one. But I think in Germany, what we have to be very proud about is that the collaboration with the federal police has been so good that we managed together to see how we can boost and speed up the whole process, not only with infrastructure, but also with the implementation, for example, of self-service systems, so that the passengers, they have in a predefined areas the possibility independently and in advance just to make a pre-registration, and then from that point to go to the booth where a verification of just one of the biometric data is taking place. So we think that in that form we can speed up the processes. And in particular at Düsseldorf Airport, we are not a hub, but we have 30% of our passengers, and there are 5 million passengers that they are EES relevant. So we have been very, very concerned about that. And our strategy, the strategy of Düsseldorf Airport, is to boost the expansion of international routes. And as an airport itself, we say we are a destination of excellence. So taking that into consideration, we implemented a plan of action already in 2021 with our local authorities. And the 3 milestones have been to upgrade our infrastructure in the main pier by around 60%. Then we implemented 35 self-service systems so that we have this pre-registration, and we make an enhancement of our wayfinding system with very smart technology so we can really monitor the different kinds of passenger flows. So we made our homework, we are happy about it, we would see, and we are still doing all the things that I maybe explain afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks, that sounds also very complex. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's for the customers. You know, we want to facilitate for the customers, so make life easier, but on the other side also to make it safer. How do you train? I mean, altogether, like we also come now to the harbors, but how do you train consumer? Because at the end of the day, it's also the travel agencies, it's the tour operators involved, you know. How do we inform those people what to do? I mean, if you speak to somebody in Minnesota, how would you know what expects him to be in Germany, or he comes in France? And the next question would be, if he finds it very difficult to go to Frankfurt or Munich, maybe he goes through Amsterdam, which is probably a much easier one. So we lose a lot of passengers maybe to our neighbors. So how are we going to compete with them? So it's 2 questions actually in one. Yeah.
So just to keep it short, so we are very much aware that if we don't take care, we probably lose some kind of competitive advantage. So actually, if somebody is coming into Europe and they realize that Paris is better than in Frankfurt or that Amsterdam, of course they are going to make a rerouting their destination. So we don't want that, and that's the reason we are really focused on to get the operation ready and to provide a very seamless passenger experience. I think one very important point is what Matthias was saying. I think the masterpiece for the coming months is communication. So together with the airlines and together with our authorities, we are developing a very comprehensive communication concept. So stay tuned, because it's going to be launched in a couple of months, and it has to be aligned with the communication concept of the European Commission. But we have to see, and this is the complex thing, how to make a targeted awareness of what is going on. So we have to make a differentiate to say, okay, I'm European, I don't have any kind of obligation. I'm not European. I have a kind of obligation, and this is very tricky, and this is very difficult, and that's the reason this is going to be the masterpiece, just in advance to communicate what the different passengers have to do or what they don't have to do. This is the masterpiece, in my opinion, and we are working on that, and we would see how we reach these different kind of passengers.
Even if it's a masterpiece, but as you say in a presentation, I mean, you want to have the harmonization of all European airports on technical equipment and processes, etc. But how can you, I can imagine, I mean, a Greece airport has a different challenge than the Frankfurt one. So how are you going to work with the airlines from the airport point of view? How can this be implemented or can be equalized at some kind of stage? Because what I also understand, when you arrive, you have to register, of course, all the biometrics, etc. But it also happens when you depart. You also have to do it again. So how is that balanced?
Well, there is not any harmonization, because Frankfurt is different to Munich, Munich is different to Hamburg, and Hamburg is different to Düsseldorf. And we all have a different kind of infrastructure and architecture, so everybody has to see the best way. I think it is important what Alex was saying, that you understand which are your obligations, wherever you are. And of course, we are thinking about using the same language in wayfinding and in other topics. But this is one of the challenges, and French, the member states, the different member states, they are challenging, or they are just implementing different tools towards this challenge.
Okay, exciting times, I must say, yes. So I think, of course, as you say, it's a huge problem with communication in all the various markets and our partners, our industry partners, because I think, the tour operators, the travel agents, how do they sell this, to their clients? Because they would probably not even know that they have to do it, and then they sit in front of the airplane and they cannot board and will be left behind. So that's, I think, is a big thing. So, and of course, we're not only flying, we also have harbors. And the cruise industry, of course, this is a huge thing, cruise and of course cargo as well. So when you come through over the sea, not on the land, because we also have the problem on land, but the person for today couldn't come. But how is going to happen this when you arrive in a harbor? This is even, you have a vessel or you have a ship with 2,000, 4,000 passengers. How do they get in and out,
Thank you. Thank you for also inviting the cruise side of that conversation. Maybe just to structure also our input, coming back and starting with the communication. And it's true that it's a complex system that impacts different actors. It will impact the passenger that needs to indeed plan its trip differently. It will impact the carriers, and in the maritime sector we have this specific challenge that aviation has for years now implemented what we call interactive API system, where you have that IT infrastructure already in place linked to the check-in of the airlines that allows communication of that data with the state agencies, and in that case for the EU it will be the agency EU-LISA. So this, you have international standards that are linked to that system set by ICAO. In maritime, you have none of this. We have been using paper manifest for passenger, for crew. This is still the case in many environments in the maritime sector. We are obviously digitalizing also our operation with the use of a single window, but it is way behind what we have seen in aviation. So for us, the very first challenge is that digital transformation of when you check in your passenger for cruise, you will need to build in an interactive component that will be able to talk to EU-LISA or to the EU platform. And we see already some challenges. This is not new. We've just implemented 2 weeks ago a similar system in the UK. And just for the fun of it, we sent our data about the passenger to the UK authority. The clearance, the okay, not okay, came 2 days after the ship had left. So this obviously creates some significant challenge in terms of the IT reliance for the carriers and the ability to talk that is much bigger than what we see in the aviation domain, where aviation has for now more or less 15 years been using interactive API and API system that allow them to have that communication. So that's for us one of the first challenges, that IT infrastructure for cruise, for ferry. I'm not representing the ferry, but our ferry colleagues have way more challenges also on that IT front. The second challenge that is slightly different to aviation is border clearance at ports. Border clearance at ports have been much more flexible, let's say, than what we have seen at airports, where this is fairly standardized still. I know no airport is the same, but still the processes for the borders is fairly harmonized. At ports and at cruise terminals in many places, it's basically sometimes just a shed with one booth, and if you're lucky, one border guard. So basically the impact of this new system is how will you process in some of the ports terminals, which are not equipped and far away from whatever you have at airports, to do passenger processing on a systematic basis. I think some of our colleagues from Hamburg Port and Kiel had made a calculation that based on the current resources available at this port, the clearance of a ship could take up to 20 hours, which obviously is not possible. So these are some of the challenges we are currently looking into, is to how do we practically implement these measures with the lack of resource we have at ports, which are, again, generally 1 or 2 border officers compared to what you have at the airport, and we're fighting for this resource most of the time. But also consistency and harmonization. I want to also stress one of the direct impact of these rules, which again, it's a new and good development for the security of our border. I think we should also start with that statement. It is an improvement. It will help our staff, airline staff, but also cruise line staff, to not have to count the days remaining on the passport and be fined quite heavily when you get it wrong. So there is clear value in these systems. The digitalization effort is positive, but the harmonization will be important. And one of the direct consequences in a scenario which we are currently looking at, where you may have a port that decides to systematically, a Schengen port, exit the cruise passenger, let's say in Hamburg, you enter all your passenger, but then you don't exit them through the same system, then you create a whole new bunch of overstayer, which means that your nice American tourists that have come from a cruise, if they are not subjected to the same measure at the port where they embark and disembark, the next time they will be trying to travel to Schengen, they will be denied and treated as overstayers. I exaggerate, but that is one of the consequences. So we need a very clear harmonization of the rules at all border points, so we make sure we do not create these overstayers and we don't create this kind of lack of compliance for the customer. So that's really for us one of the challenge to figure out, depending on our cruise itinerary, how do we create consistency? How do we also inform our passenger? But also, how can we ensure compliance across the different ports?
This comes to my mind. What happens with the people going on land for sightseeing, coming back? So you have 4,000 people going out of the system, coming back. So it's like entering again the border.
No, so that's the good news. And that's honestly, again, we have worked very well with the European institutions to make sure that the scenario and implementation are risk-based. So if you want me to elaborate, there are, let's say, four main scenarios for us in terms of implementation. You start your cruise in the UK, in Southampton. You only do day trip visits in Schengen. These are not considered as entry into Schengen, so you will not have a physical border control. You will still have that exchange of data happening and that digital compliance, but no physical control. So for cruise coming on round cruise, leaving outside of Schengen, coming back outside of Schengen, we should be fine. For cruises that would, for instance, repositioning from the Caribbean, coming into Schengen, here it's a clear scenario. You would indeed have to do your entry into Schengen as you do with an aircraft. So that is something that is fairly clear. The main concern we have is for cruise leaving in a Schengen port. So typically, let's take a Hamburg to Hamburg cruise, round cruise that would have a stop in Southampton. That's where we have different interpretation on the table, and this is something that is still a bit in the making, so I will look at you. So there's two interpretations on the table. One is you indeed need to exit from Schengen the whole cruise ship when they embark, when the passenger embarks. So you arrive at your cruise at the port, you exit Schengen. So that means you need the border resources to exit the whole ship. And again, a ship is 10 A380, Airbus A380. So the resources required are quite significant. And then you need to re-enter the whole ship when you arrive back in Hamburg. or you may choose also, based on a risk assessment, to not do that process, considering that the Southampton stop is just a transit stop for the day. So interpretation and discussions are still out there to see how we deal with that. So that's why it's still an enormous work for us with all the ports and the different scenarios, because as you pointed out, for instance, Cyprus specific status is also raising some questions. So basically for us at the moment, we're looking at each different itinerary scenarios and understanding what that means, but also discussing with the authorities how they need to interpret that rule.
Thank you.
So you have an easy job, guys. The airport and the airlines just here.
So I actually would like to add, when you say transit passengers, I mean, like getting stuck at the airport. So you have a transit, a minimum time. But what happens if you miss your transit and if you, for example, you know, I mean, what happens to those people? Are they going to stay at the airport in nowhere land? So, I mean, how do you find solutions to get those people onwards? And is there, I mean, you know, I'm as a passenger, I'm probably the last one who has a problem, you know, because I have the problem. How can I get this?
Well, we hope that we are not going to have such situations, but we don't know. We don't know because we have been working just with estimations, with very sophisticated softwares, with terminal simulations, and to see where we have a bottleneck or not. But we do not really know how does entry exit system feel like in real life. So for that reason, we are working very hard on contingency planning. So we are elaborating some kind of plan B, C, and D. So airports, they have decentralized arrivals area, so that whenever we see that we are going to have some kind of congestion, just to put plan B and C on place. Everything together with our local authorities, because it does not make any sense to move or dispose an aircraft not in Pier A and Pier C if we are not going to have the staff and the personnel. So it's a complex thing, but we are working on that. We try nowadays to set up a very data-driven process system. It sounds very complicated, but it is nothing more than just getting all this information about the nationalities of our passengers and putting it together in a business artificial intelligence unit, and just to get some kind of information with which aircraft, how many EES relevant passengers do we have, and how we can deal with the resources that we have. So yeah, I think the most important thing, and Matthias, you have been mentioning it before as well, is that we need a very strong stakeholder management. We need the authorities, we need the airlines, we need the airports, we need everybody who is involved in the travel industry, so that whenever something is going wrong, that we don't blame on each other, so that we are just acting, learning from that, and adapting, and just making the best of that.
Yeah, thanks. I think the Bundespolizei, the federal police, will play a major role in these activities. But I mean, they must put so many more people, you know, from the staff planning into this whole system, because at the moment, I have not heard from any kind of increasing the numbers of police, you know, on this kind of support at the airports, at the harbors, landline. I mean, imagine you come with your trucks, you know, and I mean, how is that going to be solved? I mean, going to Switzerland, you will be probably waiting till Freiburg, you know. So, I mean, how, I mean, maybe you work very close with the Bundespolizei as such. Have they indicated how they're going to support and implement on that?
So this has been our deal. We expand our infrastructure, and you put more personnel in place. So if they are going to do it, I don't know. Of course, they have to see how they lever their resources, and that's the reason we want to help with new technologies, with a smart processing, just to become really efficient. So the personnel that they have, they can put on place in a very, very seamless way. So it is an issue. We would see.
And if I may add on that, I think Düsseldorf is doing a fantastic job here. But there's other airports who have really capacity issues already now, which are congested. Let's talk about the hub airports, the big hub airports, maybe Frankfurt, Munich and others in Europe. It's not only Germany affected, it's across Europe. So where do you put all these people that are entering or are about to enter into Europe, into the Schengen area? Where do we put these people into your existing infrastructure? Where you have to have these terminals, then people are queuing up, people need to familiarize with the technology. So what do I need to press here? Where do I put my passport? And what do I do with the fingerprints and the facial recognition and so on and so forth? So put yourself into the shoes of a traveler who comes for the first time into a Schengen airport or any border crossing. And we're talking about millions and millions of people in a year. I think we have about 900 million border crossings per year. So that's a huge number of people that need to familiarize themselves with the processes. And every airport is different. Every seaport is different. So I believe there could be a lot of confusion unless we get it right and have a unified and standardized as good as possible communication that goes out to the world and is showing what you need to do when you come to Europe. And my experience when talking to national authorities is they just think about their little universe within the national borders. They don't see Europe as a piece of the planet similar to what a Chinese or an Indian sees when he looks at Europe, because he wants to transfer somewhere to get to another place. He doesn't want to land in Frankfurt and stay there because he needs to go to Bamberg. So he needs further travel arrangements to be made, and when he's stuck in transfer in this area to be registered and is queuing there for an hour or longer, then he's missing his train connection or another flight. So then the airlines have liability also to take care of the passenger, because it's their last passenger. They need to assist, rebook people, and so on and so forth. So communication is key. Standardized communication is even better. We don't need masterpieces from every airport, from every terminal, from every airline. So the more unified, the better it is, I believe. And we need to communicate fast, because you're talking about implementation towards the end of the year, let's say November maybe, plus minus. That's a little bit more than half a year from now. So no system is tested. We heard about the experience in the cruise sector, processing times and so forth. The devil sits in the detail, and we need to test that. That must be a successful rollout, and we're working hard to contribute to that. It's a fantastic thing to have this system in place, don't get me wrong. We need to know who's coming into the European region, into the Schengen area. We are super happy to have to get rid of the stamps. It's an improvement, but we need to get it right, and we are really happy to contribute to that. I shall say airlines have some experience with other similar systems, like the US system, ETIAS, or the Canadian ETA. We do know how hard it is to get it technically right and human training-wise right. Give us the lead time, and if necessary, let's shift it. It's better than having a rock and roll start in November. And we have shifted it a couple of times already. I mean, it's not for the first time that we're having an announcement of an implementation time. If we, to my knowledge, member states of the European Union and the Schengen area have to report to you the readiness in summer, in June. So only then we know everyone is right. And we know the gaps. And then I think we have to have a very brave and smart and wise decision as to the implementation deadline. If it's needed to shift it for a couple of months to get it then right, better do that from my perspective.
Do you get good support from the government? Because, I mean, it's in the interest of the government. But how do they see those kind of time processes? Are this realistic? When you come to the ministries in Germany, for example, It's a nasty question, I know. So, is that realistic what we're planning?
I don't know what to say now. I mean, we have invited a couple of people who could tell better than I, but they are not on stage, so it tells you something probably.
Yeah.
I believe there are some serious issues. There's a little homework to be done. And again, everybody is working constructively and very hard to get it right. But it's super complex, and I think we need to be clear about the dates and the technology that is there or not there at the time of operation, and everything we can build from there. But the key assumptions are not even on the table. The facts are missing, and we need those facts in order to plan all together.
And maybe if I can just re-stress what's very important to me is that communication is not for the European. And I agree with Matthias that we see a lot of communication happening in Europe, but that's not the point. We need the North American market to know what's happening, to understand it, and to have this very aggressive communication done. So I know the European Union is helping, but we are also on the cruise line side looking at our travel agent community in Asia Pacific, in North America, to make sure that we can have a simple message. The Canadian ETA, I think 5 years after implementation, we still had people showing up at check-in at the airlines not knowing what it was. So it will take time, it will be repetitive. And again, our plea, I think, is about the agility of the systems developed by the European Union. I think everybody needs to understand the challenge, and the problem is not necessarily just with the member states. It's a massive undertaking of the European Union to deploy this massive IT system. And so that will be the key proof. Is the system fit for purpose, agile enough to allow for last-minute applications, for passengers, for the response within 2 or 3 seconds to get a yes or no for the airlines and the cruise lines. I think these are the things we need to see in the coming months, recognizing this is a massive endeavor to do this for 25 countries and not just one, as other countries have done. But being able to have this agility of communication and system and collaboration with the carriers will be important, which you do.
Thank you. That's actually, it was my last word. I think it's so important to involve the world, because when they come to Europe, they need to know what's happening. And so, I mean, this is showing a very negative image if we don't comply with that one. We're all in tourism, and we want to sell our products, and we want to welcome people. So we must facilitate on a very high level systems and technologies, you know, to make this possible. I think at the end, we all want this system because we want to make our borders more safe, and also for the travelers, more easy to travel. So I think it's on the right way, but as Matthias says, there are little hurdles in front of us, and I think a global communication on that one is extremely important. So do we have any questions from the audience? Because this is something which, Matthias, you have, because my voice is not getting better.
I don't see anything here because it needs to be connected to the charger.
Oh.
Sometimes electronic devices are sucking.
Yeah. That's why technology had this kind of thing.
So is there anybody from the audience has a question?
Doesn't accept my fingerprint.
But we have real people. Then we get the real people here. Yes.
It's interactive, even better.
I saw one of your slides about the it's not a visa topic. Can you just bring more clarity as to how it's not? Because I struggle to tell people it's not as well. Like the ETIAS system is not a visa. You put that slide on there. Can you just go into just details to like what people are exactly confused by?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the question. Indeed, people are confusing ETIAS with a visa. They think it's exactly the same thing. First, it's an authorization that the travelers that are exempt from visa will need to require to travel into Europe. And the main difference between an ETIAS and a visa is that they can do it via the smartphone, and they will get eventually the answer within a couple of minutes. They don't need to go to a consulate, delivering a lot of paperwork to have a visa and a sticker on the passport. It's an electronic authorization. They can have access to it via the ETIAS website, and eventually, most of the majority of cases, you will have the answer within a couple of minutes. So this is the main difference.
But maybe I think the question is the fraud, because it's a beautiful money-making machine if you have a fake website as ETIAS and you collect €7 from people. So I think that's really one of our concerns as well as a travel industry. And we see this still in the US with ESTA, where you have a lot of fake ESTA websites, which are basically taking the money for people, claiming that you then will get an ESTA, and at the end you don't have a paper. And that's really a key concern, and I really welcome the fact that you try to sensitize the travel industry about this, because the worst case will be to have all of our passengers arriving at our check-ins, claiming, yeah, I have my ETIAS, they've paid €20 to a website that actually was a fake website. And we see this quite a lot already. So the 60 websites you were mentioning, it's not just about disinformation, it's actually about money-making fraudulent way from different fake websites.
Yeah, yes. Indeed, and thank you for pointing it out. Indeed, it's something that we are trying to fight. And even the artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, when you ask ChatGPT what is the official website, ETIAS website, it leads to several different ones, not official one. So we are trying to convey this message to where, in the future, travelers will need to go to apply for a valid travel authorization.
So that's probably the next challenge then. So sorry guys for all my voice. Hope we could get through. Thank you so much for the panel today. Next time I hopefully will speak with a normal voice again and not the Mickey Mouse. But I think we had a very serious topic today, and I'm sure we will need to work with our trade media, so we will see how we can communicate and on the different stages and on the challenge. And so it's not all solution, it's not solved all the problems, but I mean, obviously you're working hard on it, and thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.